So,
hold on. Let's get there live. Boom. Now we're in.
Okay. You kick it off.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Julio.
I'm Darian.
There you go. Welcome to DNC Marketing's Friday live Q&A. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the box. Here, I'll just go ahead and type a little hello. Yeah, there you go. Just feel free to ask away. In the meantime, though, we're going to spend a couple minutes talking about becoming a household brand, what that means, give a couple examples of that. And for those of you that want to see my perspective on it in a little bit more of an unfiltered way, check out the Topic Tuesday that I did over this same topic. And then today we're going to talk about it a little bit more in depth and, of course, have a beautiful woman's perspective. Once I find that woman, I will let you know. Yeah, well, of course, I want to hear what Darian thinks about it and maybe just kind of talk about it a little bit. So off of that, again, thank you for joining. So let's talk a little bit about becoming a household name. So the long and short of it, I gave a couple examples. The most prevalent one being French fries. French fries are not from France, right? They are, in fact, originally from Belgium. They were introduced to American soldiers during World War I. And because the Belgian forces spoke French, we as Americans coined it as French fries, brought it to the US, and then from there, it just kind of kept going. And then eventually we started calling them freedom fries because the French turned their backs on us. No, I'm not trying to go political. I'm just, it was a thing for a while, right? Yeah. We were like 15 or something, and everyone was wanting to go call them freedom fries instead of French fries because wasn't during the Iraq War?
I think so. Yeah, it was but that's another great example of branding, right? Rebranding fries, and people took it on because there was a big movement behind it, which is how some of those household name brands get started and really stick, is because there's some kind of meaning behind it.
And actually, thinking about it, just kind of going off what you were saying, what's a better example of branding than war? Yeah. Right? I mean, like, I'm not saying it's a good example in terms of what we should do, right? But, I mean...
Well, any political campaign has its own branding,
like the idea that we have to, close these borders or attack, excuse me, a country, or, I mean, like, a lot of it has to do with what you feel, how you come together as a nation, i.e. as a brand. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You have to have these followers that say, I'm going to enlist, I'm going to make a difference, and then they get sent off to X location.
Right. It inspires action, right? Inspires people to vote. So I think all presidents, all campaigns, all political, everything has its own branding. Like Make America Great Again is branding. Merchandise that goes with it, the message that goes with that. Universities, hope. Yep. Yeah, universities have their own branding. The military, every single service has their own type of branding. It's how you can differentiate between different things, which is why we encourage so many of our clients to, we work with them on their brand messaging so they can differentiate themselves within saturated markets to stand out. Right? So
now, a great thing about this, though, is to also keep in mind, think about the upcoming election, which is, I think, in about a year, actually. I think it's like 63 days or so away. But who are you voting for? And I'm not actually asking who you're voting for. What I'm getting at is you're voting for the one candidate that basically outbranded the others. The reason why that's important is the same reason why it's important for you to establish your brand. They were not the only candidate running, right? During the election cycle, you're seeing people pop up saying, I want to become president, right? So like there's 12 people. Initially there was like 20 something people that were for the Democratic Party that were like I want to become the next president, right? And then slowly they're dwindling down. But it's because their brand's not getting recognized as a nation.
Right.
But some people who, for example, Andrew Yang and Bernie Sanders, who has, even if they don't necessarily have the, using Andrew Yang as the perfect example of this, even if he doesn't necessarily have the resume, because he's not a political figure to back him up, he has a great brand.
Yeah, he
and
really
that brand allows people to get behind him. That brand is what makes people go, Andrew Yang, 2020, and leave thousands of YouTube comments. It's who he is and the people that enjoy what he does and what he says.
Right, and in his case, it's actually working for him with his particular target market, the fact that he's not a political figure, especially in the current climate, right? So as a brand, it may actually help you to go against the grain.
Sure.
And say, like, because he's an entrepreneur, and
Right.
so he's come up with all these different ways to appeal to the younger demographic in hopes that they will vote.
Yeah.
So depending on who your target market is, seeing where they come from and what their interests are, and the different, perspective you can take with your brand, the different way you can get your message across to them that maybe other brands aren't doing, taking the unconventional approach can actually reach more people. It can actually surprise people and be like, oh, this person really does stand out. This is something interesting. I should pay attention.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good example. But it's more than just, is his brand good? It's more than just that, because excuse me. For any brand to really become household, you almost need a movement behind it, right? And with that, again, we're not attempting to be political. We're just using politics as an example. With that, his message is a movement. The idea of universal basic income, the idea of that people are replaceable with robots and things like that, that eventually we're going to run out of jobs to do that we feel are necessary and we want to pay people for. So therefore, we need to establish something that allows people that are in poverty or close to poverty to continue their education and to continue their advancement in their careers. Like, that is a movement that so many people can understand and get behind. And if you don't like it, that's okay. But I think the idea, the topic, the discussion point is something that no one was talking about before, and now people are talking about it.
Right.
And now people are going like, okay, well, even if I don't like this guy's idea, maybe I feel like his point of view is too, I don't know, let's just say socialistic. Again, the fact that you're talking about it now and saying like, okay, I don't like his idea, but here's my idea on how that could work better as a more conservative, or as somebody who is more, leaning towards capitalism, more capitalistic tendencies.
Right, and so think about it. Think about the polarizing aspect of that too.
Right.
That's really what gets people talking, and this works with all kinds of brands everywhere, right? Universities, Coca-Cola versus Pepsi. The fact that people, the Twix right or left group.
Edward versus, what was that guy?
Jacob?
Which one's a vampire?
Edward? Are you bringing up Twilight?
Yeah.
That's so long ago.
Team Jacob.
Hashtag.
She has a tattoo on her butt of hashtag Team Jacob.
I do not have a tattoo on my butt.
Prove it.
But the polarizing aspect, Julio, back to topic, is actually what gets people motivated behind a brand too. It helps that movement, right? Thinking of the political campaigns, people are right and left wing, or they are like diehard for certain people and like super hate the other people, and it divides families. Like, so many people feel so strongly about it because it's so polarizing. Coca-Cola versus Pepsi is kind of, I wouldn't say completely similar, but people do find themselves in one camp versus another camp.
Red coats versus blue coats.
Yeah.
Boom. Civil War reference.
Yeah.
Got him.
So branding, again, right? Even back then, there was branding.
All right. Let's back up on that one. Maybe
Image is one thing. Message. Just because you didn't call it branding doesn't mean it wasn't branding. Some of those same characteristics are still used today.
I guess. I think we're that one might be a little rough.
It's not. Tell
we're
me
gonna have to edit that
it's
post.
Not. No, we're not gonna edit that. It was a great point.
That was a terrible point. The Civil War. Let me tell you how to brand like that.
Not like that, but the different camps. Just like you said, war is branding.
Yes.
Different kinds of
I know.
war.
I know. Okay. Let's move on before
Welcome
we get
behind the curtain a little bit.
hashtag.
Stop hashtagging people.
No. All right, go.
So we talked about
Kleenex.
polarizing. Kleenex.
What about that one's not polarizing. Okay, so actually to hit on that, there's no such. All right, people used to say there's no such thing as
Bad
publicity, right? And in today's climate and market, I think that is completely untrue. Excuse me. Back in the day, the idea behind it was that it caused people to recognize who you are. Mm-hmm. Excuse me again. People would then forget about it, but then they'd remember your name, right? Yeah. The problem now is that because everyone has a voice on the internet, nobody recognizes who you are anymore, right? We only have, I can't remember the book. It was a book or it was a while back, maybe a couple years ago. But the idea being that you can only process so many names, things like that. Like you only have storage capacity for like up to like 500 people in your brain because of our more primitive ancestry. Mm. So we were good for that amount because of a general tribe mentality. Mm. We can keep relationships with up to like 500 people. Mm. So the fact that people are constantly being bombarded with advertisements and news and things like that, you no longer have the ability to just have a brand recognition that they're just going to remember. Thus why when you're producing ads and things like that, you want to be in their face all the time. Mm. That's why Gary Vee is actually correct when it comes to producing content. I know a lot of people don't like it, and including myself, because I don't like the idea that I need to be on my phone all the time, that I need to be producing all this shit all the time, that I need to be, posting 20 things a freaking day. And we've chose not to do that. We've chose to do something, to go a different route. Mm-hmm.
Because of our lifestyle.
Right. But that may be something that we have to switch up in the future. But the point being that you were so bombarded with so much that you have to be front of mind. Mm-hmm. Because people are just, the average person follows over 1,000 pages on Instagram, right? So it's not like you can even, excuse me, it's not like you can even say all the people you follow. Yeah. On Instagram as an example, and that's just off one platform. Now you talk about LinkedIn, you talk about Facebook,
Twitter, Pinterest.
Yeah, everything. You could be following 5,000 brands easily without even batting an eye. And
you won't remember most of them.
Exactly. Yeah. The only reason why you would is if somebody got in big shit, like big trouble, and then you have to, at that point, and then it has to be this constant, right? Like you have to, Jeff Bezos, you just have to know, like, Amazon CEO, multi-billionaire, and then what? Well, and then it's like, I don't really know much past that, because I haven't done a lot of research to him. I know some issues that Amazon's had, both good and bad. I know a lot of things because that's been front of mind due to news stations. Mm-hmm. But besides that, that's about it.
Right. So unless there was some sort of scandal,
right,
like you wouldn't know anything about that. But because you recognize his name, brand recognition, as soon as there's something about him, a big scandal or something on the news, you're paying attention, you're interested because I know who that is. Mm-hmm. Let me see what's going on.
Right.
Yeah. So another thing that I guess that relates to the scandal was like, and branding itself is like the Tylenol scandal that happened several decades ago. Mm-hmm. And it was like a big PR nightmare where somebody broke into, they were lacing Tylenol pills. They broke into the pharmacies and they popped them open. It was before they had like the seals and things, and they were lacing them with poisons and things. And there was a big PR scandal because people died, and Tylenol had to come back from that.
You know what? The interesting thing about that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that actually never occurred.
No, we studied it in PR.
No, I think if I'm not mistaken, and correct me, but don't correct me.
I will correct you.
I think it was just that somebody grabbed it and they used it to try to kill somebody, and that became the PR nightmare because they blamed the tablets. I think it was like a husband-wife thing where she tried to kill the husband, and then eventually people found out because what she did was she put a couple random
not Tylenol pills.
Yeah, like poison pills or whatever in like 2 or 3 random bottles. So that way she has proof that it wasn't her. Mm-hmm. And then eventually they found out it was her and that she was trying to kill her husband and that this was like an inadvertent thing because excuse me. Anyways, that's the gist of it.
That does sound familiar, actually, but
don't get any ideas.
It's been a few years since I was in journalism PR, but
that's why I check all my pills.
Mm-hmm. But essentially,
she'll try and kill me one day.
Okay, back to topic, Julio. So essentially, that led to, Tylenol's big scandal. They had to do a big PR cover-up. They came up with the seals, I believe, that are now over like all pharmacy drugs.
Hashtag cover-up.
And then
hashtag fake news.
Okay. Hashtags. And then I don't even know what my point was. Anyway, brand recognition. So you knew Tylenol.
Do you see what I have to deal with? She doesn't even remember her own points.
I'm just having too much fun today. So brand recognition.
You were talking about the seal.
The seal. Yes, I was trying to talk about the seal.
But like the cover.
Branding.
And not Navy SEALs.
Navy SEALs.
Good branding right there. Navy SEALs. Mm-hmm. Boom. Think about it. Navy SEAL, you think tough, killers, gonna, just destroy you. And that's great branding because the truth is, of course, I mean, granted, obviously, amazing with weaponry, things like that. But I've seen so many times on like UFC fights and stuff where they go, this guy was an Army Ranger, this guy was a Navy SEAL, this guy was a Green Beret. And you just instinctively think, this guy's going to kick ass. And then he gets his ass handed to him, but because that's not how that works.
Right. It's a different thing.
Right. But we assume it. We have this John Wayne-like mentality where we're just like, oh, this dude was a Navy SEAL. And you just start bowing down, right? You're like, oh my God. Because you've heard this pushed in media and you've seen this worship of that.
Right, and not to knock it all because their training is ridiculously hardcore.
Of course.
But in like MMA, especially after being retired for a while, it might be a bit of a different ball game at that point. Talking back to like what you were covering, French fries, and then like Kleenex, a big reason those brands are able to get out there, Coca-Cola, a big reason they are a household name was one because they were the first in their industry, which can always help. So if you're the first in your industry, just keep going. But if you're not, a big way you can become that household name is to put yourself out there a ridiculous amount like Julio was talking about. Like Gary Vee has been telling everybody, right? Is you have to be willing to be on camera and be pushing your message constantly because you need to have brand awareness, especially these days when everybody's online, right? Mm-hmm. And there's so much to go through. You have to be committed to the fact that you need to get out there and be pushing your brand. You cannot just be the artist that sits quietly and makes the beautiful things they want to make to sell, and your product will sell itself. Nobody will know who you are. Nobody will know where to find you. You might as well not exist because there's so much out there. You have to put forth the effort to be seen.
Yeah, and that's an interesting it's just interesting the way that is nowadays. Like you have to both be the salesman, the pusher, and the artist, because without either, you're kind of falling short.
Yeah, and it's really difficult for a lot of people, especially when we talk to people. They're at one or two camps, right? They're great with their brand message because they know what they stand for. They are the artist through and through. But when it comes to the marketing side, it's a big deal to put yourself out there, right?
Yeah.
It's very difficult. It's nerve-wracking. You get nervous. You feel judged. Like all of these different things start coming up, and it can put you at a standstill because it's so daunting. But you might also be running into the fact that you're just like, well, I've also got a job and all these other things that I need to support me, and so I have very little time, and you have to find ways to carve that out. And again, make the commitment to fill that time and get your name out there. Or they're in the other camp where they're just like, I've got this. I know what I need to do. Like I've got a background in it. I am on board with the sales funnel and all the work that I have to that goes behind it. But the art side or the the product side, the service side lacks.
Right.
Because you want to be out there. You want to be seen, which is awesome. But what are you going to offer?
Yeah.
Right? So if your product is lacking and you're out there and you're marketing and you're putting yourself out there so great, but your brand message lacks because you don't really know who you serve, what you're trying to say, what you sell, how you can help, again, you're not going to reach anybody because they don't know how you're going to help them, what problem you're going to solve for them.
Yeah.
So you do have to kind of be in both camps. And what we've seen with that is the longer you're in the game, the easier it gets, right?
Yeah.
The person, it's not the most talented person that wins out. It's not the smartest person. It's not always the person with the most money. It's the person who sticks it out the longest for a variety of reasons, right? Because you've been in the space longer, you're ultimately going to have better brand awareness as long as you've been consistently putting yourself out there. The longer you're in it, the more you learn. So not only, regardless of which camp you start out in, or if you're a mix of both, or if you're neither, if you're in the game long enough, you're picking up things, you're learning. As long as you're applying yourself and you're buying courses and you're, reading articles online and you're testing different things and putting yourself out there to see what works, what doesn't, you're learning a whole heck of a lot. And so if you've been in the game for 10 years learning and consistently putting yourself out there, I mean, in my opinion, it is inevitable to be seen to a certain point. Now, there is a point where it comes, in my opinion, where, okay, you've been in the game for a while, you've learned a lot, you've got this thing down, you're pretty sure you know what you want to do, now it's time to put some money behind you.
Money where your mouth is.
Put your money where your mouth is. That's right. You can't just be putting yourself out there consistently. Now it's time to take that next step, put some money toward ads.
Right. Push
yourself a little bit further and take that next level.
Yeah, you want to make sure that when you're doing that, though, that you have your brand already kind of in place. Because I can't remember. I feel like I always come up with points that I just never know what the hell I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about. Like, I'm terrible with names. I just can't. So, like, I maybe heard about this company on a podcast or whatever, so I remember like the general story, but like I can't remember for the life of me who the person was or what the company was. So going off of that,
if you know what he's talking about, drop it in the comments.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday when I went for my 2-mile run. Bam, just in
hashtag humble brag.
Hashtag you can't.
We're just gonna call this one hashtag.
Hashtag you can't run from me unless you run faster than me, which is probably the case.
Anyway.
I was getting lapped by children. So I think my run is essentially like most people's fast walk. I'm very sad.
Everybody goes at their own pace.
What was I saying?
You were listening to a podcast.
Oh yeah, okay. So I was listening to a podcast.
Mind like a
And
goldfish.
What was I saying about the podcast though?
You heard a thing from
What
somebody about a thing. I don't know.
What were we talking about?
Putting money behind your consistency.
Yes. Okay. So it was a fight promotion, and what they did, they basically they were bleeding out. They didn't know what to do, so the CEOs and stuff decided to they put $1 million towards I can't remember what company that company tried to hire. But they put $1 million towards this company in order to help them from an advertisement standpoint, and they lost it all. They basically, they basically went bankrupt. And a large part of that is because they put their last big ditch effort into actually trying to make more sales, make more money. So my point to that was just that make sure that your brand is in place, that your customers are there, that people recognize you and they're not running away from you before you just assume that we just need to put tons of money into advertising and then people will come. Yeah. If people aren't coming naturally, if you're not engaging with your customers and your clients, if you're not making sales, you're going to have a long road ahead of you. Yeah. Assuming that you even can do something at all, it's going to be very hard. It's going to be very difficult. Go ahead.
You have to do the groundwork, right? You have to be in the dirt before you can start expecting to make that work, because you have to know who your people are. So what we always recommend is people starting out organically, just to find your footing, just to validate your product or your service and start to understand who it is you potentially sell to.
But I want to start genetically modified. not organic.
Hashtag GMO marketing.
Hashtag, we should make that a thing.
It's probably a thing already.
GMO marketing.
But by starting out like that, you're getting the groundwork, you're learning, and you start to build your base. And if you start out just automatically putting money and stuff behind it, one, you haven't validated your product or your service. So you're wasting your money potentially, because what if what you've created doesn't resonate with your people at all? What if your message is off, right? So a lot of this testing, like a 5-week test to understand who your customers are with the personalities, lion, golden retriever, otter, beaver, and making sure your brand message resonates with those particular customers, whether you're testing the personalities or not, just in general, and what you solve, right? The problem that you solve. Every single product or service has to solve a problem. So if you haven't refined all of those little things, if you haven't been organically testing your funnel, your email list, your voice, if you're a solopreneur, like, it does not make sense to then throw a shit ton of money at your brand when you're not even sure what your brand is, when you're not even sure who you sell to or the best way to do that.
I want to rephrase that a little bit, because I hear that all the time, and the idea that your thing has to solve a problem, and I disagree, but not in maybe the way you would imagine. All I want to say is that instead of thinking about it in terms of my thing needs to solve a problem, which I think forces you to try to think negatively and try to, I think people have different variations of what is problematic, right? I would say that what needs to change is your brand or your product needs to solve a want.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can agree with that.
Because as you were mentioning that, I was thinking like, well, I mean, if I was selling music, is music a problem? By the way, I used to rap. I was a rapper. When I was 13.
Tangent.
I'm going to put up my mixtape CD.
It was pretty good, actually. Anyways, moving on.
My point to that was that, what was it? My point?
You were all over the place today.
Shh. So,
it has to solve a want. So
okay.
Music,
yes.
for example.
So, using music as an example, it's not a problem that people, if you're trying to sell your CD, right? Let's just say it's not problem. There's not a problem in that people should buy your CD because they have an issue. But what they want is to listen to new music. They want to be the person that people are like, oh my God, man, I love that guy or that gal. Who are they? They want to be almost like an ambassador to someone new. They want, there's a lot of different wants just to finding a new artist, right? The idea is just that they want something new to listen to, right? Once they heard a song, it's their favorite song, they've heard it 10 times, and all of a sudden they're like, all right, I can kind of care less about the song. Let me go ahead and do something else. That's why streaming platforms like Pandora and Spotify are so big. It's because they have 10,000 artists plus, at their disposal. So you can constantly listen to new people, then you save the song, you can listen to it later, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to keep looking and streaming and et cetera, right?
And that's actually a great point, because...
It is a great point.
Well,
thank you.
I still think of it as solving the problem, though, because... In my opinion, the problem there is that people are tired of the same old thing, right? That's why there's a distinguishment. That's why there is. That's not the right word.
Come on, what are we doing here?
I'm the copywriter. That's why different decades are distinguished by different musical styles, right? So and then things like mumble rap came up, and all the different styles of rap. Yeah, I'm not a fan, but people were looking for something different. That was the problem. Is everything is the same. And every brand is like that. They're looking for something different. That's why, back to Coca-Cola, you see them put out all these weird flavors sometimes, right? It still comes back to their core. It still comes back to the core. Music is still the core. Their rap itself, the base style of it, of rhyming words together in a certain pattern, that's still the core of what it is, but the style changes, the flavor changes, just to get people in. And some of those flavors just don't stick, like mumble rap in my opinion. Or I don't know, I don't like many Coca-Cola flavors, but that cherry vanilla, that is just awful. It didn't stick, but it drew attention to the brand, right? Which brought people back to the core, and it reminded people oh yeah, Coca-Cola, that's a thing. Yeah? I think it still solves the problem. It's still giving people, or the want, right? The want for something different. So any other product brand or service brand, if you're offering something that you're like, oh man, I make jewelry, or I'm a marketing expert, a saturated market, okay, let's differentiate ourselves. Let's take a slightly different spin and solve for a target market that's been neglected. Let's solve for a type, a flavor of this service or product that hasn't been touched yet or is not overly saturated. Let's look at it from a different perspective and see who we can touch, how we can help with these different things and take a different angle. And that might even just be personality and brand messaging.
Well, and I'm not suggesting that you're not solving a problem. I'm just saying that people may want to think of it from that perspective in terms of what do they want?
How to wrap your brain around it.
Right, because I think a big problem with copywriting and things like that is, especially when you're being taught it, is that you're just like, man, to me, right? You go, well, what's the problem you solve? And I'm like, I don't solve a problem, but people want my whatever, my vape pen or whatever the hell you sell. Like, I don't have a problem because, like, in my mind, that's a negative connotation. So I'm like, my customers don't have a problem if I'm selling people stocks. Right? You know, like, I'm selling to people who make $10 million a year to, I want to sell them thousands of stocks per tag or per whatever. Anyways, bundle, I don't know. My point to that is, like, what is the problem you're solving when you're selling? It's like, I mean, if I delve deep for me, I can think of, like, okay, let me reword that. And Darian and I have had this discussion many times. I dare say argument, because she raises her voice at me, and she says it's passionate, but I disagree. I think it's hurtful. Anyways, what was I saying?
I don't know. I'm not going to help you anymore. But I had an opinion.
No. So yeah, as the stock person, you know what? No. Hashtag me too. You get your opinion voiced.
Oh, you're helping me. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm allowing this to happen. You can say thank you at any point.
If I could roll my eyes any further. So what I was going to say is, you're right in that aspect. You're not solving a problem with the stocks. You're solving a want. What is the want? People want a creative way to invest in stocks. They want to put less money in and get more money back.
That's what I was basically gonna say.
Okay, so how can we frame that then with your branding for your particular firm? Start out with the lowest cost on the market to get the biggest bang back. Well, obviously you're gonna have to show some results for that, but that's basically the framework there. The message there is that you're giving them this new thing they want: creative stock investment for a higher return and a lower cost. Like, that would be a great pitch for me. I would be interested and intrigued by that. Tell me more. Something else we've talked about a lot is, like, a lot of our jewelry clients, right? They're in a very saturated market, but we work with them on that brand messaging to help them solve a problem. And it's not necessarily a problem, it's a want. So I really like I really like your perspective there. And that maybe their brand messaging is very goofy and fun. And so the problem they're solving is, or the want that they're reaching out to their customers to give, is that, jewelry can be fun. It can be light. It can be something that you wear anywhere. Like, there's one woman I worked with who sells jewelry specifically to women, or maybe not specifically, but she sells to women who like to ride motorcycles, right? So if you're wearing jewelry and riding a motorcycle, it's got to be comfortable. It's got to be sturdy. And her particular jewelry is a particular style. So that is a different flavor on a saturated market, which puts her in a much smaller niche, which means she is, like, hot to her buyers. That is a huge tribe and community, and she's doing really well. I know you want to talk, but I'm just going to keep talking. You need to shh.
Whoa. That felt hurtful, and I feel like there was a lot of tension in the air right now.
And maybe you're a little sensitive.
I think you just, you know what you did? You just...
Are you going to hashtag again?
You did something really beneficial. You hushed the man as he was trying to interrupt you, and really...
Girl power.
Exactly. As I'm just going to leave that alone. Okay. All right. What was I saying? What was I trying to say? What were you talking about?
I was talking about the jewelry for the motorcycles.
Oh, yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that when we talk about uniqueness or finding the thing that makes you different, it doesn't mean that you have to be different, more different than everybody. Like, as an example, let's say you're dating, right? Or when you dated your spouse, whatever. Like, you or your spouse or whoever, like, they're generally speaking, they're people. They're going to have pros, they're going to have cons, they're going to have some things that gross you out, they're going to have some things that you fall in love with, cute little quirks that you're just like, aw, and then other things that you're like, aw, and that's just how it is. Personally, I've never experienced that. Everything Darian does is awesome and beautiful and intriguing, and I just adore every step that she places.
Okay,
I basically grovel at her feet.
Stop. Moving on.
Okay, I'm just saying. You understand, right? No? You wouldn't. Because I'm the one doing the groveling.
Dating.
I lay myself on the floor and she steps over me complaining how bumpy I am. That's basically the relationship.
So
No. Okay, so my point to that is that but you fell in love with them. You decided to marry them. You decided this was your soulmate. This was the person that was 1 out of 7 billion that you're supposed to be with. Granted, some of those billions you're not able to get in contact with. But I'm just saying. I mean, mathematically, I said something that was not true, right? Some of them are children. Some of them are
speak a different language.
There's a language barrier, right? Anyways, my point to that is that you found this person that you decided, I want to spend my life with, or at least a couple months, depending on what you're doing. I don't know. What is my point?
I don't know.
Oh, my point is that you don't have to have a uniqueness. You just have to be unique to that person. And the reason why I mention that is because so many people push that. And then again, I'm just thinking as a consumer. When I hear that, I go, crap, I don't have anything unique. Excuse me. When we're talking about us, I go, what the hell am I supposed to talk about with branding that nobody else has ever heard? What am I supposed to say when it comes to branding or content marketing or whatever, like, again, using us as examples, that they can't, spend a couple hours Googling or whatever. Like, what am I supposed to do that's different? And the truth is that what makes us different is that it's us. We have our back and forth. We have our fun. We have our quirks. We have our examples.
In our particular case, we have our spin, our particular personality sales system that really advises a difference.
Exactly. Now that happens to be our thing that is a legit differentiator, but there's so many people out there who don't have that, and they're selling a course to you or a masterclass or whatever that actually is pretty redundant. As far as the information goes, yet they still make sales. But maybe they didn't make a masterclass that they saw from someone else. That person didn't buy. So what I'm getting at is, remember that when you're fixing that want or you're fixing that problem, even though that person may be at another jewelry store or whatever, they may come to your store, and because of you or because of your particular product, even if your message is the same as the last jewelry store, you have a uniqueness to you. Your particular product is unique. You are unique. How you communicate to them, the information you put out, the content you produce is unique to you. Colors, logos, designs, something about you is going to attract people versus the other brand. Even if your overall message, even if your overall charitable donations, all that other shit is basically identical.
Yeah. So think of like the difference between Gary Vee and Kimberluna, right? Well, maybe Gary Vee's not the right example because he doesn't have a course, but Kimberluna has a branding course. And then some other entrepreneur with some other kind of course. Like, their personalities are incredibly different. But maybe Marie Forleo, for example.
Or James
Wedmore. Very different personalities, very different target markets. They teach a lot of the same principles because there are some very foundational things to sales and building a business and branding. But their personalities are different.
Yeah, and how you're going to learn is different.
Yeah, so like the different personality sales system here and the way it advises you to come across to your target market, that's where those differences lie. Is you're getting across to people in a different way. Now, Gary Vee grates a lot of people the wrong way, right? Because he's very in your face, like, this is how it is. You better get with the program or get out. Like, that's not going to resonate with a lot of people. For me in particular, like, I can get with a few motivational things, and then I've had enough. Like, it's a little too much for me on a daily basis. But James Wedmore I listen to all the time. Why? Very different personalities come across, very different target markets, very different way of motivating you to do different things.
Ugh.
Even if it is, see, and he doesn't. So different personalities. But if you understand who you're selling to, if you understand how you need to speak to them, that's where you're going to know how to get across to your target market. So if you're just like, we get this question a lot. I don't know how to develop my voice when I'm writing a blog post. I don't know what to do when I'm on camera. Okay, well, let's test your target market. Let's see who it is you're most likely talking to and start working from there. If you're talking to an otter, you got to be big and hand gestures and lights and so much enthusiasm. Everything is so exciting and wonderful. Talking to a golden retriever, let's take it down a notch. Let's be a little sweeter. Let's talk about our story and where I came from and how I can help you. Like, very different way of coming across to people that's going to appeal to a very different target market.
Yeah.
Rant over.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyways, you know what I was gonna say. Here's what I was gonna say, but what I was gonna say is not important right now. What is important is that Darian got her information across, and that.
Are you gonna disagree with me?
No, actually, I don't disagree with that. That's foundational to us.
Oh, okay.
So, okay, all right. I think today is a wrap. Hopefully you got some good information. If not, well, then I wasted about 42 minutes of your time. But yeah, so that's going to be it for today. Have a great day. Darian and I are going to go change our clothes and go for a little bit of a charity run.
I'm ready.
And it's going to be rough.
It's not. It's going to be great.
It's going to be rough. I'm not going to lie.
We appreciate y'all showing up. Make sure to tune in every Tuesday and Friday, usually 9 a.m. Hawaii time. And Tuesdays are topic tackle. So if you have a topic you want us to talk about, a lot of T's in there.
Topic tackle Tuesday to talk about.
A topic.
Topics.
So join us there. Let us know what you want us to tackle and do some research on and help you with. And then come back on Friday, especially if you've been to the masterclass, because that's where we're focusing our live Q&A to help people work through their homework and things. Or if you'd like to join us and have a conversation about whatever's on your mind, we would love to have you.
All right. I guess that's all she wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you again. We appreciate y'all, and we will see ya.
Bye.
Bye. Stop streaming. Boom. Stop recording.